Welcome to another episode of English 101, where we explore real-life strategies to help you grow as an English learner. Today's episode is not about grammar rules, pronunciation drills, or vocabulary memorization. It's about something far deeper and far more important: your mindset. The way you think about learning English can determine whether you succeed or give up. The idea that you must speak English perfectly is a trap. Perfection can become a prison that stops you from speaking, from trying, from connecting. But what if we told you that the real goal isn't perfection? It's communication. It's connection. It's understanding. Today, we're going to talk about the mindset shift that can change everything. If you've been feeling stuck, afraid to speak, or overwhelmed by the pressure to be flawless, this episode is for you. Part 1. Mindset Shift. Don't learn English to be perfect. Learn to connect. When I first started learning English, I believed that perfection was the ultimate goal. I thought I needed to speak flawlessly, without a single mistake, with the pronunciation of a native speaker, and the grammar of an English professor. Every time I made a mistake, I felt ashamed. I would freeze in conversations, afraid to say the wrong word. I spent hours memorizing grammar rules, and rarely spoke because I was waiting for the moment when I would be ready. But here's the truth. That moment never came. And for many learners, it never does, because we're chasing a false ideal. The idea of perfection holds so many of us back. We imagine that if we can just learn a little more vocabulary, master one more tense, or fix our accent, we'll finally be confident enough to speak. But in reality, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from connection. From realizing that English is not just a subject you study, but a tool you use to express your thoughts, your emotions, your life. It's a bridge between you and the world, between you and new opportunities, between you and other human beings. Think about it. When you speak your native language, do you speak it perfectly? Do you always use the correct grammar? Probably not. You speak to be understood. You speak to share a joke, to tell a story, to ask a question. English should be the same. The goal is not to impress, but to connect. The magic happens not when you say everything right, but when you say something real, something honest. And the person you're speaking with understands you. That's the true power of language. I remember the first time I had a real conversation in English. I was nervous, of course. My heart was pounding, and my words were not smooth. I used the wrong verb tense. I paused to search for vocabulary. But you know what? The other person smiled. They listened. They answered. We talked. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that gave me more confidence than any grammar exercise ever could. That moment changed everything for me. From that day on, I started to shift my mindset. I stopped chasing perfection and started focusing on communication. I began to speak more, even if I wasn't sure of the grammar. I listened more, not to judge the speaker's mistakes, but to understand their meaning. I watched movies and listened to podcasts not just to study English, but to feel it, to enjoy it, to live it. I treated English not as a mountain I had to climb, but as a path I was walking every day. Some days I walked faster, some days slower, but I never stopped moving forward. This mindset shift made learning English more joyful. I stopped being afraid. I laughed at my mistakes. I shared my thoughts without overthinking. I stopped waiting to be ready, and just started using English as much as I could. And the more I used it, the better I became. Not perfect, but better. And that's all that matters. Progress, not perfection. If you're someone who feels stuck because you're afraid of making mistakes, let me tell you this. Mistakes are not the enemy. They are signs that you're trying. They are your teachers. Every mistake is a lesson, a small step forward. So speak, write, listen, watch. Live in English. You don't need to sound like a native. You just need to be understood. And more importantly, you need to be brave enough to try. Remember, the world doesn't need another perfect English speaker. It needs you, your ideas, your voice, your story. Speak with confidence, not because you're perfect, but because what you have to say matters. Let go of the fear. Let go of the pressure. Focus on connection. Because when you connect, you succeed. Part 2. Letting go of fear and embracing connection. I used to be the kind of learner who edited every sentence in my mind before saying it out loud. I wanted each word to be correct, each phrase to be smooth, each sentence to sound like it came from a textbook. I thought this made me a good student, but in reality, it just made me quiet. I was scared to speak. I was scared of being judged. I was scared of sounding wrong. And in that fear, I stayed silent. But here's what I learned. Language is not about perfection. It's about participation. It's about raising your hand in class, even when you're unsure. It's about joining a conversation, even if you can't say everything perfectly. It's about sending that message, making that phone call, starting that conversation. Because in the end, communication is a brave act. Every time you open your mouth to speak in English, you're taking a risk. And that risk is what makes you grow. When I stopped trying to sound perfect, I started sounding human. My speech became more natural. I used simpler words, but I used them with confidence. I stopped comparing myself to others and focused on expressing myself. And something incredible happened. People responded. They listened. They encouraged me. They didn't care if I made a mistake. They cared that I was trying, that I was showing up. One of the most powerful things I ever heard was this. Your English doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. That stayed with me. It reminded me that some of the most inspiring people I've ever met spoke English with an accent. They made mistakes. But their message was clear, and their confidence was contagious. So I made a decision. I would stop learning English to impress people and start learning it to express myself. I would stop chasing perfect grammar and start chasing real conversations. I would stop treating English as a test and start treating it as a tool to connect with people, to understand their stories, to share my own, to learn from their experiences, to live more fully. And you know what? This shift made me fall in love with English all over again. I no longer felt like I was studying. It felt like I was living. English became part of my daily life, not just a subject in a book. I started journaling in English. I talked to myself in English when I walked down the street. I followed English-speaking creators I loved, not to practice, but to feel inspired. I built my own little English world, and it made a big difference. Yes, I still made mistakes. I still had moments when I forgot words, or mixed up tenses, or didn't understand something. But those moments didn't stop me. They pushed me. They reminded me that learning is a journey, not a destination. There's no finish line. there's only growth. And as long as I was growing, I was winning. I want you to believe this too. You don't have to wait until you're fluent to speak. You don't have to be perfect to participate. The best time to use your English is now. Not next year. Not when you've learned all the vocabulary. Not when your accent is better. But now, as you are. Speak with your accent. Speak with the words you know. Speak with courage, because courage is more powerful than perfect grammar. And the world needs courageous learners, people who are willing to show up, speak up, and connect. I challenge you to let go of the fear, to stop judging yourself, to start believing that your voice matters, because it does. Every time you choose to speak English, you are saying, I'm here, I'm trying, I believe in myself. And that is more than enough. Let me share some real stories. These aren't stories from textbooks or famous English teachers. These are stories from learners, just like you and me, who changed their mindset and transformed their English journey. First, meet Ana from Brazil. She was a quiet, shy student who always felt nervous during English class. She used to memorize grammar rules and never spoke unless she was sure her sentence was correct. For years, she made slow progress. Then one day she heard a podcast where someone said, "Fluency comes from mistakes." That hit her. She decided to join a local language exchange group. At first, she was terrified, but she kept showing up. She made lots of mistakes, but people kept talking to her. And something amazing happened. Within 6 months, her English exploded. Not because she learned perfect grammar, but because she used English to make real connections. Then there's Omar from Egypt. He was obsessed with getting a perfect score on the IELTS. He spent hours doing practice tests, memorizing templates, studying every detail. But when he finally passed the exam, he realized something shocking. He still couldn't hold a conversation in real life. That's when he changed his mindset. He threw away the textbooks and started watching YouTube videos about cooking, gaming, and travel, all in English. He began leaving comments, asking questions, even making his own short videos. Within a year, he was speaking confidently with people from around the world. He still studied sometimes, but now he did it with joy, not pressure. Another story, Amina from Morocco. She loved reading books in English but was terrified of speaking. She believed her voice didn't sound native enough. For years, she stayed silent. Then one day, she heard a teacher say, "Your accent is your identity. It's not something to erase." That changed everything. Amina started joining voice chats in English-speaking apps. Her voice shook the first few times, but she didn't stop. Now she leads a weekly English discussion group online, helping others overcome the same fear. These are just a few examples, and maybe you see yourself in one of them. The truth is, we all have doubts. We all have fears. But we also have choices. We can choose to hide behind our fears, or we can choose to show up anyway. We can choose to wait for perfect, or we can choose to be real. If you've been stuck thinking to me, I'm not ready yet, let me tell you something. No one ever feels ready. You become ready by doing. You don't wait for confidence. You build it. One brave moment at a time. Every sentence you speak, every question you ask, every time you raise your hand, you're building your fluency and your courage. And remember, no one remembers your mistakes. People remember how you made them feel. If you speak with kindness, with curiosity, with passion, that's what they'll remember. Not your grammar, not your vocabulary, your heart. I once spoke to a man from Japan who told me, I spent 10 years learning English before I realized that connection is more important than perfection. And when he started speaking more freely, he made more friends. He got more job opportunities. He finally felt seen. Not because his English was perfect, but because he was authentic. So now, I ask you, what's holding you back? Is it fear of judgment? Fear of sounding wrong? Fear of not being good enough? Let those fears go. They're not helping you. They're holding you prisoner. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't need anyone's permission to speak. Your English doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. It just has to be yours. Part 4. Final reflections. Speak with courage, not for approval. As we come to the end of this episode, I want you to pause for a moment and think. Why did you start learning English in the first place? Was it to pass an exam, to get a better job, to travel, to make friends from other countries, to understand movies and songs? Whatever your reason, I guarantee it was not to be perfect. It was to connect, to explore, to grow, to live a bigger life. But somewhere along the way, maybe you started measuring your success with the wrong tools. Grammar scores, perfect pronunciation, flawless writing. Those things are useful, but they are not the goal. The real goal is to be able to express yourself, to share your thoughts, your ideas, your stories, yourself. You're not a robot. You're not a grammar machine. You're a human being. And language is not a code to crack. It's a bridge to build. Let's talk about fear again, because this is where most people get stuck. What if I say it wrong? What if people laugh? What if I forget the word? Let me tell you a secret. Even native speakers forget words. Even native speakers say things wrong. Have you ever seen someone freeze during a presentation, even in their first language? It happens. And it's okay. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to say, "Sorry, can you repeat that?" That's part of learning. That's part of living. If you wait until your English is perfect before you speak, you will never speak. And every day you wait is a day of missed connection, a day of missed opportunity, a day of silence when you could have shared something important. Let me ask you, when you listen to someone speak in your language, do you judge every little mistake? Or do you listen for meaning, for emotion, for honesty? People are the same everywhere. They don't care if you mess up a verb tense. They care if you're sincere, if you're trying, if you're showing up. So from now on, stop chasing perfection. Chase connection. Speak to understand and to be understood, not to impress. Start small. Speak to yourself in English. Record your voice. Watch your favorite shows and repeat what they say. Write your thoughts down. Talk to a friend. Join a language group. Say hello to a stranger online. Every little moment counts. Every little word is a step forward. And when the fear comes up again, and it will, just remind yourself, I'm not doing this to be perfect. I'm doing this to grow, to communicate, to live fully. You are more ready than you think. You know more than you realize. And the world is waiting to hear your voice. English is not just a skill, it's a doorway. A doorway to friendships, careers, travel, love, learning, and freedom. But only if you walk through it. So, take that first step. Then the next. then another. Don't worry about how perfect your English is. Worry about how present you are, how open you are, how brave you are. You don't need perfect English to have a perfect conversation. You just need to care. And I promise, if you keep showing up with that mindset, you will go further than you ever imagined. Take one small action today. Speak English out loud for 2 minutes. Talk about your day. Describe your dream. Share a memory. Don't correct yourself. Just speak. Let it flow. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. And if this podcast helped you, share it with someone else who's learning. Let's build this journey together. Let's stop learning English for perfection and start learning it to connect.